In the winter between 1953 and 1954, the town of Bladenboro, North Carolina was host to a series of strange animal killings that baffled the locals. It started on December 31st, when 2 dogs belonging to a man by the name of Johnny Voss were killed. Voss described them as having been, quote, torn to ribbons and crushed, end quote, with a large amount of blood in and around their kennels. In an interview, he said the following, quote, "My dogs put up a good fight. There was blood all over the porch, big puddles of it, and there was a pool of saliva on the porch. It killed one dog at 10:30 and left it lying there. My dad wrapped the dog up in a blanket. Thing came back and got that dog, and nobody's seen the dog since. At 1:30 in the morning, it came back and killed the other dog and took it off. We found it 3 days later in a hedgerow. The top of one dog's head was torn off, and its body was crushed and wet like it had been in the thing's mouth. The other dog's lower jaw was torn off." End quote. Over the next 3 days, 5 more dogs and 3 separate incidents were found in a similar state. One of these dogs was autopsied in an attempt to determine what was causing the killings. The police chief, Roy Flores, would state, quote, "There wasn't more than 2 or 3 drops of blood in him. The victim's bottom lip had been broken open and his jawbone smashed back. The ear of one dog was gnawed off and the tongues of 2 had been chewed out." End quote. On the night of January 3rd, Chief Flores tried fruitlessly to search for the creature using dogs, but they failed to pick up a trail. The next night, Flores rallied about 10 other officers to conduct a second search. Meanwhile, a group of hunters from neighboring Wilmington also joined the search, allegedly picking up a trail which they followed for 3 miles around the swamp, though they ultimately failed to catch up with the beast. On January 5th, Chief Flores and one other witness claimed to have seen the beast attacking a dog from about 100 feet away. The dog reportedly ran away, yelping in pain, and the 2 were unable to locate it afterwards. Meanwhile, several witnesses described a large, cat-like creature approaching their property and stalking their dogs. One witness recalled, quote, "I glanced out the window and saw this thing. It had me plumb spellbound. It was about 20 inches high, had a long tail about 14 inches. The color of it was dark, and it had a face exactly like a cat, only I ain't ever seen a cat that big. It was walking around stealthy, sneaky, moving about trying to get to my dogs, Niggy and Pee-wee. I jumped for my shotgun and loaded it and went out to shoot it, but it moved into the darkness right away, and I couldn't find him again." Another witness stated, quote, "About 11 o'clock I heard a strange noise outside my window, like a baby crying. I went outside to follow the noise for close to a mile. I saw bushes moving, but I never did actually see whatever it was. However, I think it must have been close to 150 pounds, the way it went through the bushes." End quote. Still another said, quote, "After we first saw it and my husband scared it away, it circled back and came running toward the porch where I was standing. I screamed and it stopped on all 4s and turned and ran off." You know, the Bible speaks of sights and wonders before the end of time. This could be one of them. The Bible's coming true day by day. End quote. As newspapers picked up the story, public interest in the case swelled, as hundreds took to the swamp in search of the creature. By the 6th of January, over 800 people had joined the hunt. The town's mayor, Woodrow Fussell, called an end to the search, stating that the hunting parties had grown so large as to present major safety concerns. In an interview, one local recalled, quote, "Everybody was scared. Everybody nearbout that had a gun was carrying it. Anyhow, it was getting so bad, it was getting in the newspapers and the radio. There came hunters from all over, and I mean big hunters." End quote. A gas station owner, Jabe Frank, said the panic, quote, "kept snowballing and snowballing. It got so nobody would walk out on the street at night." End quote. With the hunt officially called off, progress stalled until the 13th, when a farmer by the name of Luther Davis trapped and killed a bobcat in the swamp. He presented the body to Mayor Fussell, who claimed to the press that the beast of Bladenboro had been killed. This, however, did little to satisfy the townspeople, many of whom were quick to express their skepticism that such a small animal could have carried out such vicious attacks. Nevertheless, with no other leads and no new attacks for several days, one way or another, it seemed the ordeal was over. With the hysteria now in the past, the story was analyzed from a more skeptical perspective. The beast had come seemingly out of nowhere and vanished just as abruptly. Even Mayor Fussell, who had been the one to initially share the story with the press, believed the beast to be a hoax, later stating that, quote, "A little publicity never hurts a town," going on to say, quote, "We had to do something. The town was armed to the teeth, even small boys carried guns. Chief of Police Roy Flores and I knew someone would be shot accidentally. The animal was about 90% imagination, 10% truth. Newspaper reporters labeled it the Beast of Bladenboro and called it a vampire," end quote. It would seem Mayor Fussell's bid for local recognition was more successful than he thought possible, as the story was picked up by national newspapers and, to this day, remains both a classic of American cryptozoology and a mascot for the town. But the story of the Beast of Bladenboro, some might say, is not a story of the beast itself, but of the 2 weeks of hysteria that this town had worked itself into over what amounted to little more than a few dead dogs, some wild stories, and one small town's collective imagination.